Everyone, and welcome to our this year's webinar on the DAAD undergraduate and graduate funding that's available for the academic year 2018 and 2019. With us today, you have, we have John Paul Kleiner. He's the Senior Manager, University Relations in the DAAD Information Center, Toronto. And then also Myung-Shin Kim, who's the Senior Program Officer in our DAAD New York office. So this is really a joint event here for the webinar. My name is Hanyi Geist. I'm the Information Officer responsible for marketing and outreach in the western part of the United States. Before we jump into the topic today, and we'll talk about scholarships and grants that are available, before we begin, I just wanted to get some housekeeping questions out of the way. I will, of course, share these slides with you, and in fact, you can download the presentation as we speak in the on the right-hand side in your GoToWebinar tool. There is a section called Handouts, and you will see there's one PDF, and that's the presentation of today's webinar. You can download right away, or later on in our archive, I will upload that as well, along with the recording of the webinar, so you can also listen to it later or share it with your colleagues or your peers later on. And of course, you saw on the previous slide, you have our contact information. If you have any questions later on, feel free to get in touch with us. So this is how your GoToWebinar tool should look like. Again, here is the handout you can download for this webinar. If you have issues with the audio, you can try switching computer audio and phone call. And if you have any questions, you can always type them in. I'm moderating, and I'm also in charge of the back end. So if I can't get to your questions right away, please be patient. I will take a look at the question box here occasionally, and if there's anything urgent, I will answer questions right away. But otherwise, please send in questions as they come up, and then I will collect them and ask them later on in our Q&A. So please feel free to type them in as we speak. And now with that out of the way, we'll talk about opportunities for study and research in Germany. And before we do that, some of you may not be familiar with DAAD, with the German Academic Exchange Service. So I just wanted to briefly tell you a little bit more about our organization. It's the German National Agency for International Academic Cooperation and Exchange. Really simply put, it's the higher education arm of the German government. We've actually, at this point, we're quite old, founded in 1925, really connecting Germany to the world, and really the first scholarship opportunities were available for exchange between the US and Canada. So this relationship is really a very old one and a very strong one. And so we do provide scholarships and grants. This is why you're here today, to find out all about opportunities that are available on the undergraduate and graduate level. But we do also offer counseling about studying and research in Germany. And for that, with this webinar, we really focus on the funding opportunities. So we don't really go much into detail about German universities and the programs that are available and how to find the right program, how to apply. We're going to have that webinar just on that topic in the spring. If you have any questions about that, if you want to get more information on that, I invite you to go to our DAAD.org or DAAD Canada website, and to also the Study In website to really find out more about general questions about studying and research in Germany. And of course, we'll be happy to also advise you over the phone or email, or if you're close by to our offices, also in a face-to-face advising. Also, just a few facts here. We have over 70 offices worldwide. For the US and Canada, we have the 3 offices in New York, Toronto, and San Francisco. If you apply to a scholarship or grant, in most cases, you will apply online. Well, that's always the case. But in most cases, you will actually send in a copy of your application to the New York office if that is required. And so this is where the programs are administered, and this is where the committee also meets to evaluate all the applications. My colleagues will probably also say that again, but I just wanted to point out that really our scholarships and grants are available to anyone. They're also available to international students or researchers that are currently in the US or Canada but are not US citizens or have a green card. That for the DAAD funding is not a requirement. So if you are currently in the US or Canada and you are in a full-time program, or you're a researcher at a US or Canadian university, you are eligible to apply here. Otherwise, please get in touch with the office that's closest to your location if you're listening from somewhere else, and they'll be happy to let you know if you're eligible for the grants available in that country. Now, with that being said, I would like to hand over the microphone to Myung-Shin, who will start the presentation on finding opportunities with the opportunities available to study in Germany, and more specifically, the opportunities that are available on the undergraduate level. Myung-Shin?
Yes, I'm here. Thanks, Hani. Welcome, everyone. Thank you all for attending our webinar. My name is Myung-Shin Kim, and I'm responsible for the study scholarship and the long-term research grants here in the New York office. And today I'm going to introduce the undergraduate scholarship, study scholarship, and the short and the long-term research grants, and the German studies research grant. The undergraduate scholarship is open to sophomores and juniors to fund study, thesis, research, and or internships in Germany that are either independently designed or part of an organized program. All academic fields are welcome for the undergraduate scholarship, and the funding period can be between 4 to 10 months during the German academic year, which starts on October 1st. Recipients will be awarded a monthly stipend of 650 euros per month, and DAAD will also cover health insurance and provide a travel subsidy. And the deadline for the undergraduate scholarship is January 31st. So the next slide would be the study scholarship for graduate students. So the study scholarship is open to graduating seniors, graduate students, and recent graduates for a full master's degree program at a German university, or for a study abroad stay at a German university as part of a postgraduate or master's degree program completed in the home country, in the US or Canada. The grant can be used for 1 or 2 years to complete a study in Germany. For the study scholarship, German knowledge is not a requirement, but German language ability should be commensurate with the needs of an applicant's study. The recipients will be awarded a monthly stipend of 750 euros, and DAAD will also cover health insurance and provide a travel subsidy. For the deadline is on November 4th for the study scholarship. And now I'm going to introduce the opportunities for the research, research in Germany. And one of the flagship program is also this research grant. It is awarded for 1 to 10 months. Therefore, there are divided between short-term research grant and long-term research grants. Any grants up to 6 months are considered as short-term research grants, and any grants that are more than 6 months will be considered as a long-term research grant. Students can carry it out a research grant, but also within this research grants program, we offer a research grant for PhD students, research grant to complete a doctoral degree in Germany. So the funding is between 1 to 10 months, or it could be also 3 years for a full PhD program. It is open to graduating seniors, graduate students, and postdocs. In the research grant, applicants are expected to have a well-defined research project. We are going to talk about it a little further later, I think, but it is important to have a well-defined research project, and also it is important to have an invitation by the German host or German institution, so that your German stay in Germany is essential. The research grant can be also used to complete a PhD degree in Germany, as I mentioned before, and in this case, an extension is possible up to 3 years. Regarding the amount of the grants that we can offer, it varies every year, but we could roughly award around 30 short-term and 60 long-term research grants annually. Recipients will be awarded a monthly stipend of 1,000 euros, and will also cover health insurance and provide a travel subsidy. The deadline for the long-term research grant is November 4th, once a year. For the short-term research grant, have 2 deadlines. So the deadline for the short-term will be on November 4th and also May 1st. And maybe the next slide. Honey? Yes, thank you. The German Studies Research Grants will be awarded to undergraduate and graduate students who are nominated by their department or program chairs. The program is designed to encourage research and promote the study of cultural, political, historical, economic, and social aspects of modern and contemporary German affairs from interdisciplinary perspective. The grant can be used for short-term stays only between 1 to 2 months, and it is prorated and provides between, I believe, 2,000 and 3,000 US, yeah, it is here listed, dollars to offset living and travel costs in Germany. There are also 2 deadlines for the German research grants, and these are on November 1st and May 1st.
And now the baton has been handed to me. My name is John Paul Kleiner, and I work with the DAAD office here in Toronto. The first slide that I'm going to be presenting here is on our most popular program, and I'd be very surprised if there aren't a number of you here today exclusively to learn information about this. This is RISE. The acronym stands for Research Internships in Science and Engineering, and this is an opportunity that's open to undergraduate students, so bachelor level students who are interested in going to Germany for a summer research internship. And this internship runs between 8 and 12 weeks in length and takes place in the lab of a German doctoral student. This is open to students in fields related to natural sciences and engineering. Computer science as well has just been added explicitly as one of the fields. And the way this program works is the student goes to Germany in the summer for 2 or 3 months, works in the lab of the doctoral student. The working language there is English, so there's no language barrier, and we found this to be just an extremely successful program. In terms of the logistics, how the program works, every fall DAAD gathers up project descriptions from German doctoral students. We vet those and then put them into a database, project database that goes online for 6 weeks. This year, the database will go live November the 1st, and the application and stay open until December the 15th. During those 6 weeks, undergraduate students here in North America, as well as in the UK, can go online to the RISE portal, register, and then gain access to those project descriptions. You can select up to 3 to apply to, complete a short application form, and if you are selected, you would receive a scholarship that would support you while you're in Germany to do this internship. Typically, the students who are successful are in their 3rd year of study, so they go after that 3rd year. In some cases, exceptional cases, 2nd year students may be accepted as well. It's a very competitive program, but if you are interested, particularly in graduate studies, and you go into the portal and you see themes of specific interest to you, I would encourage you to apply. Academic achievement does count, but it is not the only criteria that is considered. So definitely something to look into. As I mentioned, the deadline is December 15th. What do we provide in terms of support? 650 euros a month, plus a travel stipend, so that helps cover most of the costs of the transatlantic flight, and insurance, health insurance while you're there, as well as liability insurance. And 650 euros is enough to lead a student lifestyle. The host researcher and institution are obliged to help find housing, and generally speaking, this happens without too terribly much difficulty. So it's a great program. I've honestly, in all my years with DAAD, and I'm just started my 5th, I've never heard anyone come back from RISE having had a negative experience. So if this is something that speaks to you, by all means. Can we go to the next slide, please, which will introduce RISE's sister program, RISE Professional. So this is a workplace internship. The applicants here are generally at the graduate level, so master's or doctoral students in the same field. So here it outlines biology, chemistry, engineering, geology, or physics. Typically the natural sciences, engineering, computer sciences will see you qualify. As I mentioned, it's a workplace internship. It's up to 3 months in length. As you see on the right here, some of Germany's leading companies, multinationals with offices in Germany are involved here, but there are also many smaller firms. Germany, as many of you are likely aware, is home to a very innovative economy, and many of these small and medium-sized firms are where a lot of the really cutting-edge stuff takes place. So this can be a really great opportunity for graduate students to gain some practical experience in an international setting. The level of support that you would receive would vary depending on whether you're a master's or a doctoral student, but 750 euros a month is the standard support for master's level and 1,000 for doctoral students. It's the same process as works with the RISE Germany, the undergraduate version. That is, the opportunities, the internships are put into a database which goes live for 6 weeks, again, starting November 1st. And you would have 6 weeks to register, examine the opportunities, and then apply for up to 3. Deadline for submissions for that selection is December the 15th. So we can move on. And I think we're going to now touch on our programs for language learning, and I understand there are some people here specifically interested in this, so allow me to address that now. We have 2 programs. The first is the University Summer Course Grant. This is aimed at undergraduate students and students in master's level programs. What it does is it provides a lump sum grant of 850 euros to help offset the costs the costs associated with participating in a 3 or 4 week summer course offered by a German university. So these are summer courses taught in German at German universities. You'll see down here in the 6th bullet point, there's a URL, summerschools.de. That address has a database of summer schools on offer from German universities. You will see very clearly there's a black sun type logo which marks all those programs which are eligible to receive support through this grant. And there are literally hundreds of these programs on offer in Germany every summer. We require, of course, that there be explicit German language instruction, but many of them often have a disciplinary or thematic orientation as well. So really, regardless of what field of study you have or what your interests are, you can probably find a summer school that will dovetail nicely with your interests. 850 euros is a significant amount of money. You can go into that database. I'd encourage you to spend a little time exploring it. You'll see that the cost of these programs varies widely. In some cases, the 850 euros can go a considerable way to covering the costs. In other cases, you would have to go out of pocket, but there are literally hundreds to choose from. This is a program that is relatively undersubscribed and is a great way for you to begin your relationship with DAAD. One of the things that we like to do is to support our alumni and establish long-term relationships with scholars. So a really good way to do that would be to start with the University Summer Course Grant application. It's open to students from across the disciplines. So if you have started taking German and you will have 2 years of university level German instruction under your belt by the time you would go to Germany for the summer course, you're eligible to apply for this. So it's a great opportunity. Deadline for applications is December the 1st. Next slide, please. The other language grant that we have is for an intensive language course. And this is geared specifically to individuals who can make a compelling case as to why they would need German language skills for their academic career or perhaps their career outside of the university, so after their degree. It's open to students at the undergraduate, graduate, and PhD level. For undergrads, it's typically students about to graduate who intend to go on to master's studies where they would need German. At the graduate level, master's, PhD, it's for students whose academic work focus really requires them to have that German. So this program is not open to students who are in German studies, German language and literature, translation, interpretation. The expectation is, of course, that students will already have this. What are the necessary requirements? So DAAD requires that the student have acquired at least A1 level German, which is roughly equivalent to 1 year of university instruction. So I see on here it says 3 semesters. Generally speaking, the information I have is that an A1 level will suffice. So it's a relatively low level. You can have a maximum of B2 level, which is usually what you would get after 2 years of university level German. So there's a window in here. You have to have some German, but not too much in order to qualify. What does this course grant get you? This is a scholarship that provides 2,300 euros to cover the cost of 8-week immersion German course at one of Germany's leading language institutes. Many of you will likely have heard of the Goethe Institute, Germany's cultural arm that has offices around the world and in many major cities. They have schools throughout Germany where they teach German. Very high level of instruction, highly qualified teachers. Having done one of these courses myself, I can tell you that if you're interested in bringing your German up, your standard level up quickly, this is an excellent way to do it. So this also includes health insurance and some travel subsidy. Definitely worth looking into if the German language is a key part of your career plans. Deadline, December the 1st. Now we're going to spend a little time talking about how you can improve your chances of receiving DAD support. So these are merit-based adjudications. We try to keep a ratio of approximately 1 scholarship or grant to every 4 or 5 applicants, and generally speaking, we're able to do that. But we receive applications from highly qualified individuals, generally speaking, and so anything that you can do to help set yourself apart is definitely worth doing. Key element to any DAD application, or certainly most DAD applications, is a statement of motivation, explaining what it is you want to do and why you want to do it. So we're interested in understanding what your reasons for going to Germany are. Compelling reasons for us are, for example, that the course of study is only offered there, that the scholar, the researcher you wish to work with, is based in Germany and speaks directly to your research question, your research interests. We want to see, obviously, people who are passionate and highly motivated to undertake this, but we want to see the reason why Germany. We want to see the specificities that make Germany attractive to you. So less interesting are sort of the personal stories, family background, travel experiences in Germany and the like. DAD is an academic organization, and we evaluate things from an academic perspective. So you want your motivations to speak to those interests. Another interesting thing to note for your motivation statement is to understand how DAD understands its role. So we are funded in large part by the German federal government, and the largest contributor to our budget is the German Foreign Office, so Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And if you think about it, that frames our work as part of Germany's diplomatic efforts. And that's really very much how it's understood in many quarters in Germany, and certainly in the DAD itself. So we see our work as fostering exchange, communication between German scholars and their counterparts around the world. So improving international understanding. So essentially diplomatic type work. Our interest is that our scholarship holders go to Germany, have a positive experience, and then return to their home countries and speak well of Germany and maintain the links that they have established there. So what we want to see in your motivation statement is some sort of arc. Tell us a story of why you want to go and where this will take you, and how these links, these connections, these experiences will play out in your future plans. You definitely want to emphasize that, think that through to that extent. Paint a picture for us. The third bullet point here, I'll spend a second on, touches on the question of letter of recommendation. So you will need a letter of recommendation. Typically it's just one for our programs now. It's important that that letter of recommendation come from a prof in your major field of study and not one of your electives. And also it's important that that letter of recommendation be strong. Perhaps that goes without saying, but as I mentioned at the outset of this section here, we have a lot of highly qualified candidates, and the adjudicators typically end up having to try to split hairs with these applications by looking at things like the motivation statement and the letter of recommendation. So the grades are usually a given, quite good, very good, but then who knows this person? Those letters of recommendation help paint a three-dimensional picture of the candidate and can often have a huge impact as to the level of success or failure of an application. So the tip would be, when you are approaching a professor to ask for this letter, ask explicitly if the professor would be able to provide you with a strong letter of recommendation. Certainly here in Canada, we've heard from professors who say it can be an awkward situation when they're approached. I know it's awkward for students as well, but it can be awkward for professors to turn down a student whom they may like, but whom they can't in good conscience say is in the top 10 percentile of their students for whatever reason. So in Canada, many profs will simply take it on, write the letter, and write a lukewarm letter of recommendation, which isn't really a recommendation at all. student will never know. The application will likely fail. End of story. If, however, you frame your request explicitly by saying, I need a strong letter, the prof who can't provide it will say no. And you move on to the next one. And hopefully you find someone who can, because only a strong letter will really help you. And then, of course, make sure your application is on time and complete. So DAD applications can be fairly involved. It's not a high mountain to climb, but it is certainly more than a hillock. So you will want to register with the portal, go in and see what elements you need to provide, and start getting your application together, I would say at least a couple months in advance, or 6 weeks. You're going to need that time, and make sure it's complete. Each of our programs has a program officer, such as my colleague Myung, who's been presenting here today. Their job is to help applicants file successful applications or file complete applications, certainly. So if you have questions, you can turn to them. On the DAD websites, we have frequently asked questions. So that's a great place where you can find answers to your questions. How do I apply? Because it can be a confusing process at times for some people. Another really excellent resource is a video that has been prepared that you can find on DAD's YouTube channel. So this is basically how to navigate the online portal. How do you successfully file an application? So there are any number of resources that can help you get through the jungle that is the DAD application process. Myung, did you want to jump in at this point, or if I don't hear from you, I will simply continue.
You can continue with the additional resources, but I just wanted to add to the selection criteria, because I'm often asked by the students or campus advisors. I think that was a slide 20.
Just mention what you want to mention.
Oh, okay.
Like what?
Yeah, okay. So John Paul covered all the relevant points in terms of our selection, and that is merit-based, all that. But I just also want to mention, because I process the applications and I organize the selection, I'm at the selection committee meeting, and so I want to share our evaluation criteria. And I would say that we look at, of course, look at the applicant's track record in academic performance and personal achievement. And also whether, we have mentioned this before, whether the project or your study plan is well defined and has relevant merit. Just a little note, in the case of a study scholarship for master's programs in Germany, since it's not a research proposal, you should only indicate the convincing reasons why you have selected the particular program, and how this program will help your future academic or professional goals. And also, students should make clear in their proposals how beneficial a stay at a German host institution would be for their project. What we also look at is for the research grants, the grant period that students have requested, whether it's appropriate to the aims of the proposal. So we look at those as well. So these are the relevant evaluation criteria that we look at. So hopefully these 4 points that I just have mentioned will help you to put your application together.
Excellent. As you can see on this slide, there are a number of resources for those of you who are looking to orient yourself to on the themes relevant to studying in Germany, conducting research in Germany. United States and Canada have separate websites for DAD. There are regionally specific details on each of those. So DAD.org is for those of you based in the United States, while here in Canada it's DAD-Canada.ca. and it has information available both in English and in French. Of course, you can imagine, and many of you I'm sure have already explored this, there's a plethora of websites out there with information on studying in Germany. The best of these, in our view, would be the Study in Germany website. So that's the first one you see here under bullet point 3, study-in.de. That really addresses all aspects of pursuing studies in Germany, from the academic to the logistical. The Higher Education Compass is another resource to orient yourself to the goings-on German university campuses, specifically research cooperations. For those of you who are graduate level and above, you might want to spend some time exploring the Research in Germany site. Its address is actually now research-in-germany.org. It has excellent information, and it's calibrated to each level of study. So they have for doctoral students, for postdocs, for faculty, information again on the academic and the logistics sides of conducting research in Germany, conducting graduate studies in Germany. Very, very helpful. And finally, I'm going to highlight also the link at the bottom of the page. So DAAD is by far the largest provider of student mobility funds to Germany, but we're not the only game in town. So depending on what it is you are looking to do, particularly if it has more of a research focus, I would encourage you to explore the database, funding database found at this final URL, funding-guide.de. This has entries on DAAD programs offered all around the world, but also programs from a number of other German funding organizations. So if you go on there, it will ask for your country of origin. You would enter there either Canada or the United States. So for our purposes, you are either an American or a Canadian student, regardless of what your passport says, because you are enrolled at university here in one of our two countries. So I believe that's all I have to say on that slide.
Yeah, I think we're through with the main part. I just wanted to briefly say that if you are not yet connected to us on social media, and I apologize to my Canadian colleague here because I only have the information for the USA. Part of that is because we just switched and I yet have to update that. So apologize to my colleague John Paul, but they have their own Facebook and Twitter account now. So if you're tuning in from Canada, or if you're just interested in what my colleagues post and the events that they host in Canada, please make sure to also follow them on Facebook, DAAD Canada, or tweet at DAAD Canada. That's another resource for you. And also subscribe to the newsletter. Again, DAAD USA, you will find their information on their website if you're interested in subscribing to their newsletter. I have quite a few questions already. Please feel free to add your questions while I'm asking the questions that I already have. If for some reason your question is not answered, feel free to send us an email afterwards if we can't get to it. But I'm hoping that a lot of the things that came up several times we actually get to cover during the Q&A. So let's jump right in, and please feel free to, both of you, John Paul and Myung-Shin, feel free to answer those questions. So the first question is in regards to a program, like for example, if I want to apply for a study scholarship or a research grant to pursue a PhD or a master's program, do I have to be accepted into a program by the time students apply to the funding opportunity? Myung-Shin?
Yep. No. So those who are applying to begin a full degree course, regardless whether it's a master's degree program or a PhD at a German university, they do not need to submit a proof of contact or admission by the time of application, because the university admissions deadline in Germany is much later than our application deadline. So I just want to, for those who want to complete a master's degree programs in Germany, you should maybe list up to 3 potential host universities, but by the time of application, you don't need to have a proof of admission.
Mm-hmm. And then also, and that is specifically for the research grant for those that would like to do research, either short term or long term, but who are not interested in a formal program. What does it actually mean to have an invitation? What format should that invitation be like? Does it need to be like an official contract, for example, or what would you accept as an invitation?
Invitation, it all would depend on the project. So if it's a very close, tied collaboration of between the applicant and the advisor in Germany host, then of course we would like to see more detailed information on the letter. It doesn't have to be an official letter. We would also accept emails indicating that they will, the applicant is welcome. They will provide the facility or lab, or depending, or they can also indicate simply, yes, we do have the materials that this student needs. Mm-hmm. So it all depends. Mm-hmm. Okay. What kind of invitation students need.
Okay, great. And then this is actually a question I received several times, is that if someone is interested, say, in a study scholarship or a research grant, would the student or the researcher also be able to apply for language grants, to apply to multiple grants at the same time if the funding period doesn't overlap?
Yes. Definitely. Yeah, students who want to apply for the study scholarship can certainly, if they meet all the eligibility requirements for the additional funding program, they can apply for example, for a language course grant. Mm-hmm.
And speaking of the language course grant, maybe Jean-Paul, you can answer that question. You said that for the summer course and both for the summer course grant and also for the intensive language course grant, there are minimum language requirements. And you mentioned that 2-year college level German. So would you talk a little bit more about what students, for example, would do who either don't have any German at their university offered, or maybe just 1 year offered? But if a student maybe has experience via high school or just outside of the university, would that be accepted as well? Or does it have to be 2 years at a college in the US or Canada?
So the wording is college level or equivalent. Mm-hmm. So yes, they have that language experience elsewhere, that's fine. In terms of demonstrating that, there is a language evaluation form that is on the portal that the applicant can download and print out. Typically that's filled out by German instructors at their home university. In the event that German isn't taught at their home university, DAAD is willing to accept that form filled out by someone else. You'd need to contact the program officer with that specific situation and find out what would be a suitable substitute, but there's always a workaround. So yeah, we're not looking for specific university level, college level courses on your transcript as much as we're looking for a guarantee that you reach that level. And generally speaking, faculty or lecturers in German language programs at universities are familiar with these forms and happy to fill them out. And it's quite a simple form. It's not particularly big ask to make.
Okay. And we're actually we have another language question, but this is about the application language. So I had a question from someone who asked if the essay can be written in French, specifically that's for the Canadian applicants. Is that acceptable, or does it have to be in German, in English? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'll answer that question. We have recently set our rules. Recently, I believe it was 3 years ago. Our DAD rule is that proposal and the resume and the application form itself, and also the reference letter, should be in English.
Mm-hmm.
The transcripts or any other certificate can be submitted in French.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is our policy.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great, thank you. So as part of the application, the online PDF that needs to be filled out, one section asks for academic supervision to satisfy admission requirements. Ming-Shin, would you elaborate on that, please? What that actually means, what students have to fill out here?
That question would apply only for those who want to complete a PhD
Mm-hmm.
In Germany. So whether they have evidence or approve of someone who would supervise the particular project in Germany, that's the question.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. John Paul, you mentioned a strong recommendation letter, and you actually said that one way of students actually asking for a recommendation letter, a strong one, is to really approach the professor by asking, are you able to write a strong recommendation letter? But would you maybe elaborate a little bit more on maybe what the student can do in addition to that on her or his own? To make sure that the professor really writes a strong recommendation letter. I think a lot of students have the idea that once they ask the professor to write a recommendation letter, then their work is basically done. But what are ways maybe to really make sure that the professor writes a recommendation letter that is not generic and really more focused on the student?
Do you have an answer to that question, Hani? Because I'm not entirely sure where you're going. I think it's obviously, as I mentioned in that section, we're trying to paint a picture, a three-dimensional picture of the candidate. So it is important that the letter first and foremost addresses the students, the applicants' achievement in the classroom and quality as a scholar. And that's certainly it. But information where, if a professor is able to speak to the reliability, curiosity, relatable, related qualities, characteristics, that can help as well. I don't know. Do you have something to add there? Because
I maybe would just add to that students should bring their study proposals or really ask for an advising session with a professor to really elaborate on what they're going to do, just to make sure that the professor really knows what the intentions are, what the goals are, and really also know what the student writes in the study proposal, so that really the recommendation letter mirrors the study proposal. So really, if you can meet with your professor, that will be my advice. That's better, because that way you can really ensure that your professor is up to date, and you can maybe talk a little bit more about what your focus is. But in terms of the recommendation letter, I actually got an additional question, and I think that's important, because we talk about the recommendation letter, but then as part of the application in the portal, Youngshin, there is a online form that professors are supposed to fill out. So the question is, do students need to submit an additional recommendation letter, or does the form suffice? And then is this actually the preferred form of like recommendation letter that you would like to receive?
Right. So our preference would be the reference form that DAAD has created.
Mm-hmm.
So the applicant has to log in and generate the form. The form is not a downloadable form from our website. So students can generate the form. They enter all their information there, and they have to give the professor the form, and the professor fills out and signs the form. That's what we prefer. And once that's done, we don't need an additional letter.
Mm-hmm.
So our preference is the form, so that all the questions on the form are answered, and that's how we can see the answers to the same questions for all applicants.
Mm-hmm. And an additional question about the person who's recommending the student who's writing the recommendation letter or filling out the recommendation form. So I had a few students, either a student who's currently in a distant learning program, so someone who doesn't meet the professor personally or hasn't met the professor personally, or someone who says she's been out of the university for a year or two and is currently working for a company. So the question is it okay to have like an internship mentor or the employer write the recommendation letter or fill out the form? Would that be acceptable, Myeong-shin, or is that something that you don't like to see?
I mean, of course, if it's absolutely impossible to get a letter, and I know, but I know that some students have a difficulty because, as you mentioned, because those reasons. If it's absolutely impossible, then we would accept a letter from an instructor, but the relevant point is that they really know what your plans are.
Mm-hmm.
But
so
it's
yeah,
not limited to a professor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just to kind of add to that. So I think the important information here for you to know is that while yes, it may be accepted, you may not do yourself a favor by asking an employer to write your recommendation letter, because then you may not have a strong application. So it really is in your own interest to maybe get in touch with a professor if you don't see your professor regularly, or if it's a distant learning program, just set up maybe a Skype session or a phone call, share information via email, and let your professor know what you would like to do, just so that really a professor can write the recommendation letter. And it's really not uncommon for professors to be approached by students after a few years maybe to write a recommendation letter. So you would just need to give the professor enough time to complete the form and to really have time to spend some time on your application. We have another question. I think this is just a matter of clarifying what we mean by extension. So the study scholarship, as you said, Myeong-shin, is for 1 to 2 years, and the 2 years being to complete a master's in Germany. But can students, who maybe apply for only 1 year, are they able to extend for the second year to then receive funding for the second year? Or is it only possible to receive the 2-year funding if they apply for it right away in their initial application?
Yeah, so the options of this 1 or 2 year programs are depending on the program itself. There's some, I believe, European law program. Those are many times just 1 year. Then it's not possible to get an extension. But if someone just starts a full two-year master's degree program in Germany, let's say they're now graduating seniors, they would like to start with an MA program in Germany next year in October for the two-year program, then they can get a two-year scholarships.
Mm-hmm. And then in regards to the funding period for the study scholarship or for the research grant to really start a program like on the PhD level. So someone here starts a program in April 2018. So would the student be able to get funding for parts of the study? And if so, what would the student be able to receive in funding if he or she starts a program, say in April 2018, and that's for 2 years?
So in that case, since the funding can only start on October 1st at the earliest, the student has to fund themselves or maybe get a different grants or funding from other source. But in that case, he can get the funding for 1.5 years. Mm-hmm. Because that April semester we can't, our funding wouldn't be possible.
Mm-hmm. But then for the second
and the third and fourth, if it's in Germany.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so that is actually another question that someone had. So if there are programs, and also that's true for research as well. If someone, for example, is in a program or wants to apply for a program where maybe a year is in Germany and the other year is somewhere else, if it's a partner university that has a program that requires students to study abroad 1 year, but then 1 year in the US, or if there is research done in Germany and maybe somewhere else, would students and researchers be able to apply for funding, and how would they do that if not the entire time is spent in Germany?
Am I on? Yes, I am. So for the research grant, we cannot accommodate any states outside of Germany. If it's like 1 week, students can get an approval and they can leave Germany and carry out the research outside of Germany and come back. If the study abroad part is a part of the degree program, let's say a master's degree student, if the first year is in Germany, the second year is in a EU country in France, it won't be possible. But if the stay outside of Germany is less than 25% of the total award period, that is possible. So just an example, if someone wants to study for 4 semesters in Germany, and from that 4 semesters, 1 semester is in France, we can fund that because that would be 25% of the entire award period.
And just to clarify, not just France, but then other countries as well. That's just your example. I just wanted to clarify. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Of course, the study abroad should not be in the home country.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. I mentioned that at the beginning, but maybe Jean-Paul, I think that's a question you can certainly answer. For students that are not U.S. citizens or Canadian citizens, are they able to apply to the funding? And if there are any restrictions, what are the restrictions?
So international students who are enrolled with full-time status at Canadian or American universities are able to apply to DAAD programs. There are a couple of exceptions. One for the internship program to the German Parliament, I believe, but beyond that, I can't think of any. Young, maybe you'll remind me if I'm missing any. But generally speaking, from a DAAD perspective, if you're enrolled at a school in Canada or the United States, you're eligible to apply to DAD programs in Canada or the US.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I should add to that. Right, John Paul was right. There are some exceptions. So for the study scholarship and the long-term research grants, foreign nationals who live in the US or in Canada by the time of the application deadline, they must have either gained their last degree in the US or Canada, or will be gaining it before the beginning of their possible funding period, means October 1st. So either they should have received their last degree from the US or Canada, or will gain the degree before the funding starts.
Okay, thank you.
Does that answer the
Mm-hmm. Yeah, perfect. I have here another question, and I think it's important to get back to that, about the research proposal. I have someone here who says that I think he doesn't yet have a really solid research project yet, and I think the question is, Myeong-shin, like how detailed does the proposal have to be by the time of the application? Basically, how final does the project proposal have to be in order to be accepted and in order to be considered a strong proposal?
Yeah, I also get a lot of questions regarding that, but I always say that our independent selection committee members are all experts in their fields, and we try to really cover most of the fields. And if we cannot cover that particular field, we do ask a third selection committee member, or we select an expert, and then for that particular proposal to that reviewer. So my advice would be as detailed as possible. But of course, it all depends also on the academic status of the applicant by the time of the deadline. But yes, they're all experts and specialists in the field.
So does it, but does it have to be, if someone applies, like, does it have to be really a very detailed, fully already thought out project, or can it be somewhat vague still, to be still considered a strong proposal?
Yeah, if someone is a ABD candidate, they should, and they only need to carry out their dissertation research, then they should have already laid out a lot of details.
Mm-hmm.
Also postdocs, because they have a specific project that they want to do in Germany. Well, research for, from a graduating seniors, I mean, we review it based on their current academic status.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't say vague, because also as an undergraduate student, it could be very specific. So my advice would be better to be detailed than vague.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that would be my my comment here. I would say, if you're unsure, if your research proposal makes sense, show it to one of your professors and go over your proposal and see if it makes sense to the professor, and if the project that you propose is actually feasible. Because this is also, correct me if I'm wrong, Myung-shin, but this is also what the committee will look at if you propose research for 3 months, but then really it's only research that you can do in 1 month, then they would not accept, or they wouldn't grant you funding for 3 months. So it really depends on the research you propose, and you should really think about what you would like to do and where you would like to do it, with whom, and for how long.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
So I see here we're already past the allotted time. I recommend you go to the websites, the individual pages for the grants that we talked about. Really, all of those pages have detailed information on the scholarship, on the funding, but then also on the application process. Again, I invite you to go to our FAQ page and also look at the video on how to apply using the DAAD portal. If you have any additional questions, I see maybe a few questions coming in here. Now I won't be able to answer them right now, but I really would invite you to go to our website, go through everything. And then if you still have questions, that's what we're here for. Get in touch with John Paul in Canada or myself in San Francisco, DADSF@DAD.org, or the New York office. You can get in touch with Myeong-shin if it's specifically the research grant or the study scholarship. But then if you have questions about any other grant or generally the application process, our colleagues in New York are happy to help you. And their general email address is daadny@dad.org. I will also include that in the follow-up email as well. So for now, I'd like to thank all attendees for listening today, for asking all those questions. Again, if you have general questions about studying in Germany, if you'd like to learn more about the application process and how you can get a master's and PhD in Germany, we're planning on doing a general webinar in the spring, right before you would actually apply to the universities in Germany. In Germany, you would apply starting in May. So keep an eye out on any upcoming webinars. We will post them on our social media feeds, but also have information on our newsletters. So I don't have anything else from my side. John Paul, Myeong-shin, is there anything that you forgot to mention that you would like to say before we close this here today?
No.
No. Hopefully we'll see your applications.
Yeah.
And you're ready to go to Germany.
So with that, again, thank you for listening today. We answered all those questions, so thank you for your attention. I hope we see your applications here soon. If you have any questions, feel free to get in touch with us. And I'm looking forward to seeing you again sometime in one of our next webinars. Have a good day. Goodbye.